I, 28 male, am an only child. When I was 12, my parents divorced when my dad found out my mom cheated on him. This was devastating to my dad. My parents were best friends and started dating when they were 17. I played sports and my dad was my coach, so I had a much closer relationship to him than my mom. I was supposed to spend 1 week at my mom's, then the next week at my dad's. But I would usually just lock myself in my room at my mom's. Usually, my dad would drop me off and I would get on my bike and ride the couple miles back to his house. My mom would ask me things and I would literally pretend like she didn't exist. It got so bad that lawyers got involved, thinking my dad was turning me against my mom. My dad encouraged me to spend time with my mom, but I couldn't. My mom tried putting us in therapy, but I would just sit there till the time was up, not saying a word to her. Eventually, my mom broke down and let me just live with my dad. I haven't spoken a word to my mom in 15 years. She would show up to my games alone. Sometimes I would ask my dad to tell her to leave. Sometimes I didn't even notice she was there. She would try talking to me after and I would walk right past her. I cut her whole family off besides a few of my cousins that were around my age. She showed up to my high school graduation and I asked a couple of teachers to remove her, and they did. She never dated anyone else, to my knowledge, and was still attempting to reconcile with my dad a few years before he passed, calling it the biggest mistake of her life, and begging my dad to forgive her. When my dad passed a couple years ago, she tried to show up to the funeral and I met her outside to ask her to leave. My fiancée, Rachel, was with me when I did this, and my mom cried upon learning we were engaged. Rachel introduced herself as my fiancée, saying she couldn't believe I hated her still, this many years later. So last week, I received a letter from my mom with a large check inside. In the letter, she said she couldn't live knowing she wouldn't be invited to her only child's wedding, that her whole family is hurt that I cut them off, and that she had been keeping tabs on me all these years through my cousin's updates out of respect for me, but couldn't handle not being at the wedding. I ripped the check up and sent it back to the return address. She shouldn't have even known my address, as I keep her blocked on all social media. I called up my cousins who admitted that since I was 14, they have been providing my mom with updates on me. Prom pics, college updates, engagement photos, and they sent her my address. I was so mad that I told them they wouldn't be invited to the wedding anymore, because I don't want my mom getting access to it. Rachel is saying I'm going too far now, and uninviting my cousins along with freezing out my mom's whole family because of her actions is an a-hole move. Am I the a-hole? I'm going to go out on a limb and say you are the a-hole. Acting out as a 12 years old is to be expected. Deciding not to ever forgive your mom is totally your right. Though it was 16 years ago and you, while affected, were not really the aggrieved party. The fact that you are still throwing tantrums like a 12-year-old at the age of 28 makes you the a-hole. I'd even go so far as to say your fiancé should consider this a pretty serious red flag. The fact that you can act with such hatred and spite over something that happened over 16 years ago and only peripherally involved you, to me shows a pretty serious character flaw. At the very least, she should be concerned about what it would take for you to direct that anger at her, and what form that anger would take. Not the a-hole. You're not cutting your cousins off because your mom cheated. You're cutting them off because they broke your boundaries. They knew you wanted nothing to do with her, yet they sent updates and your address. This is a major betrayal. She could have turned up at the house and you would have been unprepared. I made it very clear that if anyone told my dad about my life, specifically my wedding details, then I would cut them out. I didn't want him and his wife turning up making a scene. Oof, this is a tough one to judge on the exact question you're asking. I'm not seeing that you asked your cousins not to talk to her, so I'm feeling you're the a-hole here. You certainly have the right to be angry at your mother, but holding such an intense grudge for this long over her cheating on your father once just doesn't sit right. This is something you need to actually deal with. Honestly, your mother doesn't sound like that bad of a person. Yes, she made a horrible mistake, but she spent 15 years passionately trying to have some form of a relationship with you, while doing everything she can to respect your boundaries, and you gave her nothing for that. If there's more that your mother did wrong, I'd understand, but it's just not there. I, 27 female, was supposed to get married to my ex-fiancé, Mason, 29 male, on the 20th of this month. But last week, a mutual friend caught him cheating on his ex, Kim. So I called it off. Because it's so close to our wedding date, I had already booked everything, like the venue, catering, and everything else. I barely managed to get any money back, as it's mostly non-refundable, so in total, I've lost $20,000. Last year, I took out a loan to cover the costs of the wedding. The longer I take to repay it, the more interest it gets. When we first got engaged, Mason agreed to sharing our finances together, meaning had we got married, I would have been able to pay it off. This was supposed to be in our prenup, but because we didn't get married, it meant he no longer had to share finances. I asked him if he was still willing to help, and told him that I will go into debt if he doesn't, as I can't repay it alone. He told me, "It isn't my problem, you took out a loan you can't pay back," and stopped responding after that. When we got engaged, Mason proposed to me with a family heirloom ring belonging to his great-grandmother that was worth $25,000. When we canceled the wedding, he told me he wanted the ring back, but we never got around to arranging a time he could pick it up. Because I don't want to go into debt, I told him that if he didn't agree to help pay it off, I wanted a lawyer involved, that I would sell the ring. He didn't reply and ignored the messages. However, after talking to a mutual friend, Jake, I found out he actually read the messages and told everyone he didn't care because I wouldn't do it. I asked Jake to tell Mason that if I don't get a message from him in the next 24 hours, that I would sell the ring. Jake told me he again said he didn't care and didn't think I would do it. So the next day, I sold the ring to an online website, had messaged Mason to tell him it had been done, and told him he shouldn't have underestimated me. He started cussing me out, saying I didn't scare him, and that he would be around for the ring later. True to his word, he came to my house demanding the ring, and I told him I sold it already, and showed him the proof. He blew up at me, saying I was a petty B, and that I shouldn't have sold it because it wasn't just a ring. It was an heirloom that meant a lot to his family. A lot of my family members think I overreacted and shouldn't have gone to extreme measures, as it will be hard for him to get the ring back, if he even can at all. Am I the a-hole for selling his great-grandmother's ring? Not the a-hole, but legally, you probably aren't in the clear. This isn't what you're asking, but you really should consult a lawyer about this, because he probably has a strong lawsuit against you, depending on jurisdiction, of course. Generally, heirlooms are exempt from the usual engagement ring rules, which is another complicated topic and vary greatly by jurisdiction. Heirlooms are considered property of the family and lent to the fiancé wife, and must be returned thereafter, even in the case of death of the husband. You are hugely liable if he or his family want to sue. You should have gone to small claims or even just gone to his parents and demanded the money. Obviously, you're not the a-hole here, and he is. And I totally sympathize with your situation. But you could be liable for much more than your $20,000 loan if this goes south. Everyone sucks here. You suck for getting $20K into debt for a wedding. Seriously, man, it's one day. And for selling an heirloom. It's also possibly illegal depending on your area, as rings are given in contemplation of marriage. And if the marriage doesn't happen, the ring should go back. He sucks for cheating, and expect you to shoulder all the cost of the wedding now that it's been called off. I was really prepared to give a different vote, but if you don't want to lose a valuable family heirloom, don't give it to someone and then cheat on them. Also, believe that person the many times they warn you that they'll sell it to pay for a wedding that had to be cancelled due to your own antics. So yeah, not the a-hole, OP. And it sounds like you're so much better off without Mason in your life. In general, my sister-in-law is fine. I don't love her, but she's generally not awful. She thinks that everything should revolve around the kids, and that everything that anyone does with her kids is a bonding experience, and those all are so important. If anyone in the family is doing anything, she wants the kids to be involved. Even if we want it to be just adults, she starts guilting us. There are some things that's totally appropriate for. Things like baking cookies. Sure, bring the kids. Building snowmen? Sure. Decorating for Christmas? Okay. But for example, when my husband, her brother, and I were going on a hiking trip, she kept asking us to take the girls, and it would introduce them to the outdoors and be a great bonding experience. We said no. This was our couple time, not family time. She got all stinky about it, and even tried to send them over with bags bagged in attempt to guilt us into it. We mentioned over the holidays that we were going to be building a new addition to our home, and she immediately lit up and said how it would be a great bonding experience if we got the kids involved. Husband shot this down. It's something that he and I are working on, together, to make our home ours. Neither of us wanted to have to watch kids with tools and hammers and nails, keep them on track, deal with the whining when they get bored, etc. She kept pushing about how maybe this would inspire her kids to take an interest in building or hands-on work, and it'll be a great bonding experience. I said, can you stop with the "it'll be a good bonding experience" every time you want to guilt someone into involving your kids? She got defensive and said that in a normal family, people would want to spend time with the kids. It wouldn't be seen as a burden. I said it's not a burden, but brought up our hiking trip as an example and said that it was intended for me and my husband to just like hike, have fun outdoors, maybe drink a little in the tent, relax. She got pissy and was like, well, look at you having all the time in the world to play around and no time to spend with your family. We do spend time with family. We do spend time with the kids. We have even endured the god-awful family vacation with the kids, just to make everyone happy. But we don't have kids. We don't want everything in our life to be revolved around kids. Sister-in-law is still upset about this and keeps making passive-aggressive remarks about it to anyone who'll pay her attention. Am I the a-hole for saying that? Not the a-hole. She wants to do two things: get free childcare and expose her children to different experiences without doing it herself. Why doesn't she take the kids for a walk in a local park? Go to a craft store and build birdhouse kits. It's the job of the parent to make these things happen. If another relative is involved, that's a great bonus, but it's not your responsibility. She's also careless and clueless to think you should have little kids around while there are construction tools present. What an idiot. Not the a-hole. Not your fault she doesn't want to spend time with her own kids. So she has to push the poor kids, who don't sound like they're the problems here at all. Honestly, I'm not at all trying to take a shot at them, on others when they reasonably want some adult time instead of every single thing revolving around the kids. Recently, my 27 female brother, 23 male, lost his job and couldn't afford rent. So I decided to let him stay at my apartment rent-free until he got another. I'm able to support two people. We have a good relationship and he agreed to do half of the chores and the cooking. He cooks pretty well, so I thought it was a great deal. Yesterday, when I came home from my job, I had the surprise to see my brother naked on my couch, watching the TV. I froze a bit, out of shock, then asked him what the hell he was doing sitting on my couch, naked. He tried to explain himself, but I just told him to put on clothes first and we could talk later. Once he got dressed, he told me that he was a nudist, that he preferred to not wear clothes because it was healthier and more natural. I told him that I didn't have a problem with him being a nudist. It's just that I didn't want to see him naked in my home. I explained to him that he is my brother and I don't feel comfortable seeing his private parts at all, and that even if he didn't see nudity as sexual, I did. He answered that he wouldn't put clothes on when he was at home, and that it was tiring enough to have to be dressed in public. I told him that if he would like to be naked at home, he needed to find his own place. I let him know he needed to make a decision, be clothed here or he had to get out. Today, he mostly ignored me and was clothed, thankfully. And I feel guilty because he would probably be homeless if I kicked him out. But at the same time, I don't want to see him naked. Not the a-hole. There's nothing wrong with being a nudist, but you can't force someone else to deal with your naked ass on the furniture. He stays clothed with a roof, or he moved out and rubbed his ass all over his own belongings. Those are his choices. Bare ass on my furniture? Oh hell no! That's nasty and damn unhygienic. Unless he's scrubbing himself down there to be polished perfection, his butt comes with a bit of crap on it at all times. And any amount of sweat is going to transfer harmful bacteria from his butthole into your furniture. What does he do when he farts? Butt blast bacteria-filled air, and sometimes other stuff, into whatever is nearest. Not the a-hole. Whether his lifestyle choices are right or wrong, I think nudism is cool. It's negatively affecting you. Even if the relationship between nudity and sex is an entirely social phenomenon, the bottom line is he's making you feel uncomfortable in your own home. I really doubt the burden of wearing clothes is greater than the burden of having to process regularly seeing a naked family member when you don't want to.